Utah Jazz and the Memphis Grizzlies tonight. I think it's a 6 o'clock start. I probably should know that if I'm going to call the game. David Locke with you, Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan. Thanks so very much for making this your first listen every single day, for your second listen every day. We have Locked On Now for you. It's a recap of all the NBA games of the night before. Limited edition last night with two. So you can check out Locked On Bets and get ready for the weekend. Also, NBA trade deadline show coming to you. All right, so why are the Memphis Grizzlies so good? Like out of somewhat nowhere, 8th seed last year, coming out of the play-in. Suddenly, the Memphis Grizzlies are the 3rd seed at 33-17 with a 2.5 game lead over the Utah Jazz. They've won 7 of 10. The Grizzlies have won overall, they've won 3 of their last 6 after winning 11 straight. So they've won 14 of their last 17. So the easy answer is they have the stud in Morant, and he has been truly amazing, averaging 26 points a game. We're seeing the natural development. You've heard me say this a lot if you've listened to Locked On Jazz. One of the true misnomers in the world is that rookies who have a really good first year are supposed to get better in their second year. That's actually not true. They usually do the opposite. Morant actually did that a little bit last year. He went from his rookie year where he shot 48% and 34% from three and slid to 45% and 30% from three. He went from 18 points to 19. Now he's making the natural jump. Second to third year is when, if you struggle your rookie year, then you'll get better in year two. If you get better if you're great in year one, you don't actually get better in year two. You just make the jump. And he's done it. His 3-point shooting's up to 36%. He's going to the free throw line, another free throw a game. He's taking about half of another 3. He's taking 4 more shots. He's averaging 26 points a game. But as you look at the Grizzlies, I really think you have to look a little bit deeper and try to figure out, a little bit more to them than what it is than just, Ja Morant's great. So a few things. One is incredible roster building depth. They're just really, really good at almost every position. If we just sort them by minutes played, and you have Ja Morant first. Desmond Bane has been an amazing pick for them. He is now in his second year. He was a 30th pick of the NBA draft, and he has been remarkable. He's gone from 9 points a game to 18. You'll see coming up in points, not to tease it too much and give it away, but in points gained, he actually is a borderline all-star. Dillon Brooks, who's not a very efficient player, but he's certainly a solid 28 minutes a night and a great defensive player. Now, all of a sudden, they have Bane and Brooks defensively on the wings. Jaren Jackson's a shot-blocking 7-footer at 2 shot blocks a night. And then Steven Adams isn't really a rim defender in the sense of blocking shots, but he takes up space at 26 minutes a night. One of the things I just strongly believe about the NBA is, do you have 240 minutes every night? What's happened to the Jazz recently, having lost 9 of 11, we don't have 240 minutes of NBA players on the floor. If you don't have 240 minutes of NBA players, the non-NBA minutes are such a crusher that it'll cost you games. It'll sincerely cost you massively. That's how you lose. So you look at their starting lineup set, then DeAnthony Melton's is probably the weakest link they have because he can't shoot, but he's a pretty good defensive player. He's shooting 32% from 3. Kyle Anderson's a long-standing veteran who knows how to play. Tyus Jones might be the best backup point guard in the NBA, never turns it over, 4-to-1 assist ratio. And then they've got just guys that are better than you think. Brandon Clark shooting 65%, one of the most efficient players in the league. John Conchar is their Joe Ingles of last year. He's played 42 games this year. He's playing 18 minutes a night. He's shooting 42% from 3. Then you have your fourth center is really by the time Steven Adams plays center, Jaren Jackson plays center, Brandon Clark plays center, and Xavier Tillman, who's pretty darn good. And there it is. Like, that's 240 solid minutes, stunningly, with all of them young, right? Ja, 22, Desmond Bane, 23, Dillon Brooks, 26, Jaren Jackson, 22, DeAnthony Melton, 23, Tyus Jones, 25, Zaire Williams, who's probably the weakness in this group. He's probably not an NBA player, and they're giving him 20 minutes a night. He's played 31 games this year, so he hasn't played all of them. Brendan Clark is 20. Brandon Clark's 25, and John Conchar is 25, and Xavier Tillman is 23. That's insane. So the first thing is depth. They're just not putting out weak minutes anywhere on the floor at any point in time. The second thing about the Grizzlies and why they're so good is they're elite in two categories, crazy elite in two categories. No, and one of them is a death nail for the Utah Jazz. They play the fewest amount of possessions of any team in the NBA in the half court. So when you look at play context using cleaning the glass site, and you look at the percentage of plays in the half court, the league average is 80. Memphis plays 74.9% of their possessions in the half court. The reason this matters is because one is that possession in the half court averages about 0.94 points per possession, and in for the league, and anything in transition is about 1.22. So if you're in transition, you're zero point 0.3 points better than anyone else. Memphis is not particularly great in transition. They're just in it a ton. They're in it 19% of the time, 4 percentage point more. So call it 4 or 5 possessions more a night, probably 4, over your opponent or the average, and it's 0.4 points. We've done this before. That's 1.6 points a game. That's 4 or 5 wins right there. They're sneaking 4 or 5 wins. Okay. The second thing is, how do you steal possessions? The way you steal possessions is offensive rebounding. The Jazz generally have been pretty darn good at this, getting offensive rebounds. The league average on an offensive rebound is 1.1 points per possession. Again, we just talked, if you just go overall, the league average overall on a possession is about the same as that. So if you're in the half court and you get an offensive rebound, you end up with a huge bump because you go to 1.1. If you're just in a transition, it's just an extra possession. Memphis is number 1 in the NBA, 22 plays a night off an offensive rebound. League average is 17. So they're stealing 5 extra possessions a night. These are incredibly valuable because by definition, that's a possession that was a 0, right? You've missed the shot. You're not getting the ball. It's a 0 at that moment. Now, okay, league average offensive rebounding rate is about 30%, is a little about 25%. So on 1 every 4 of those, you're probably going to get it back. It's 26%. So, but what Memphis is doing is Memphis is getting it back 32% of the time. So Memphis is grabbing an extra 3 or 4 plays a night off an offensive rebound, which is an extra 1 point, which is another 2 or 3 points. This is how you win. You add up little tiny point fragments along the way. It's why we shoot so many threes and we used to not allow threes. That's like one of the untalked about stories. We've gone from 2nd in the league in 3 attempts to 9th in the league in 3 attempts. Like that's a big, big difference to who we are in the league. And that's where we were gaining advantage. We have an advantage tonight. We take the most amount of threes. They're 28th in the league in threes. So if we got to stop the offensive rebounding from them, or else they gain that advantage back. Like that's where our advantage is compared to theirs. So the question really is going to be 3 attempts and makes compared to their extra possessions. They also force turnovers. They're the 5th biggest team in forcing turnovers. We're last. Few little notes on this that I think are really interesting about Memphis. They're not great offensive. They're 7th offensively and 10th defensively. They're now like a legitimate championship contender. They're top 10 in both. They're 23rd in shooting, but they're number 1 in offensive rebounds. They're 10th best at taking care of the ball, and they get in transition, so they give themselves easier opportunities than they would otherwise. Defensively, they just force a lot of turnovers, which again isn't great for us. They're 14th in the league against the shot, 15th in the league in defensive rebounds. So they're average in all of their categories. What's the key to them truly is what we're talking about with this transition. When you start running their numbers and they get out in transition, when Memphis gets over 20% of their possessions in transition, they generally win. When they've had games in which they're below 14%, it happens rarely, they're 0-4. When they've had games in which they're below 17%, they kind of equalize it out to being about 500, because actually the kind of weird breaking point to them is 16.3. And then so, arbitrarily, I can go take 16.1, so call it 16, and below, and they're 5-7 on the year if they're not out and running, and they have terrible offensive games. If you look, when they don't run, they're in the 18th percentile, 24th percentile, 18th percentile, 42nd, second, 18th, and 6th. And that will be their challenge in the playoffs, is whether or not they can still run at that level. Similar story on offensive rebounding, though. If you don't have any offensive rebounds, it's often because you're not missing, but they do live off of that. So they're elite in those two categories, and that's what makes the Memphis Grizzlies so good. 240 minutes, a superstar in Ja Morant, emerging players in Jaren Jackson, but really an elite level. They get out in transition, steal points there, and they steal points on the offensive rebound to make them seventh best. And then they're just great. They have Dylan Brooks, and they have Desmond Bane, who are both long, and it's super impressive to see how they do that and how they work that as well. Today's show is brought to you by Built Bar. You can just go to built.com and go get your 15% lock 15 bonus. I actually have some friends over the other day. I had them try the churro puffs. They agreed with me. They're really good. She looked at me and she's like, it's a candy bar. I was like, exactly. And then she goes, it's only 4 grams of sugar. I was like, exactly. That's the thing. Coconut brownie chunk is still my favorite. I am going to be ordering the coconut marshmallow puffs because I've been just kind of caught up in this whole puff thing and think it's amazing. Those do have 6 grams of sugar, I will have to admit. And the coconut brownie chunk has 7 grams of sugar. So it depends on the bar you get. The raspberry bar's got just 4 grams of sugar and 130 calories and 17 grams of protein. And the mint brownie as well. It's amazing. It tastes like a candy bar. It is a protein bar, and it is Built Bar. Go to built.com/promo code LOCKED. Promo code LOCKED15, and you get 15% off. They also have factory seconds going on right now. One other note on Jazz and the Grizzlies tonight. Desmond Bane last against the Jazz had 28 on 12 of 20, and Jaren Jackson had 26 with 4 threes when they beat us. Ja Morant had 32. Bojan had 24. Bojan, by the way, last 5 games, 20 points a game, 39% shooting, and 28% from 3. So he's struggling. Joe Ingles last 5 games, 35%, 34% from 3. Need to get him going. Jazz, obviously, without Rudy Gobert, transition defense is going to be vital, and we're not particularly big. And Hassan Whiteside did not run the floor at all the other night, so he will certainly have to do that tonight against the Memphis Grizzlies. Who are the points gained All-Stars, and is there anyone on the Eastern Conference teams that we want? All coming up on Locked On Jazz.